Hello, everybody, and welcome to Behind the Streams. Today we've got such a great episode planned. I honestly, I don't want to waste any time. You find me at West Sisa on Twitter. I don't care if you do or not. Let's get right to the good stuff. I've also got with me my co-host Rini.
Hey guys, I'm Rini, Adorable Me. I do communications and operations for Streamer Square. You can find me Adorkable at many places. My name changes everywhere. But yeah, we are really excited about this. We're talking about mental health today, which is such a big thing because everyone has mental health. Everyone deals with this. This is something that, is not new to any of us. But learning how to deal with it appropriately and dealing with it in a public setting such as Twitch is a unique thing. So with us today, we have Mxiety and Dr. Kelly Dunlap. So Mxiety, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself, then we'll have Dr. Dunlap introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I am from the blue version of Twitch. My name is Mxiety, also known as Marie Shanley, also known as I'm on your screens to be a mental health talk show host. But we talk about everything and anything considering mental health is part of everything. Exactly like what was just said. So I'm a writer. My expertise to this is in no way do I pretend to be a professional. The only certifications I have are in mental health first aid, and so that is something that I bring to the table in terms of how do we make sure that we as streamers are responsible about how we present mental health information and how we talk about mental health on our streaming services. And when we create content, period. And so that's what I'm bringing to the table, and a bunch of my own experience. I live with depression, anxiety, and ADHD and been diagnosed for 10 years. Again, I'm not a professional, don't pretend to be. I talk about things from my personal experience and then from the knowledge base that I do have, which is a background in medical editing and research.
Cool. Should I just jump in?
Yeah, go for it.
Just making sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Kelly Dunlap. I do pretend to be a professional. I am, actually. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I practice therapy in Maryland, where I live. But I also have a master's in game design, and I teach game design at American University. And to round out the trifecta, I work for Take This, which is a mental health nonprofit dedicated to getting rid of stigma and improving mental health resources and access throughout the gamer community and game development community. And I work there in the capacity as our streaming manager. So I work with people like M, who are doing amazing work, being out there and being amazing representations for what mental health can and should be. And I'm just there in the background to support them. And I'm so happy to be here.
I am a Take This ambassador. I should have noted that considering.
BT dubs, it's fine. I got you.
Okay, so I guess we're going to jump right into it because we're going to have a lot of awesome questions in chat. We've already got way too many things to talk about because this subject is just so broad. So we're going to, I guess, jump right into something that's really topical for everybody right now, and that is, unfortunately, COVID-19. We're dealing with that in a different way as streamers and moderators. It's something that's completely new to us. And I guess before we jump into some tips and some stuff from Mxiety and Dr. Dunlap, what are some of the things that you're seeing more of in stream now or in Discord, and what's some stuff that you've noticed an uptick in, Rini?
I've noticed, generally there's a lot of confusion, and we're confused together. So that's been one thing. And then it's a lot of just like shared frustration, I guess. Everyone wanting to just kind of like joke around and vent, at least in the communities that I'm in. I've also noticed that like it's really interesting now that typically in streams you can't put links because of safety reasons. But as a moderator, I'm asking for links now for people because I want to see people's sources. Like, I come from an anthropological background, so I love like knowing where people are getting their sources and citing things. And so adding that to the dialogue has been new because it's not something that we normally had to do. It's like, okay, you said this. Normally I can trust you as a person, but there's so much information out there. We have information overload. We need to know where it's coming from. And so that's been kind of a big thing. It's an exhausting thing sometimes. I do take a lot of breaks more often now than I used to, just because some days it's heavier than others. It's just been kind of hard.
No, I definitely, I mean, I wrote down that phrase that you used, anxiety, mental health first aid, because it just struck me as I'm like, that's almost kind of what it feels like we've been tasked with recently. And that's not necessarily something that all of us signed up for as moderators or feel comfortable doing. So, what are your takes on these things?
So number one, I feel like a bobblehead because I'm literally like, yes, 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 all of the above. Mental health first aid is a course that you could take, and I recommend it to every streamer and moderator out there. It is super easy to complete. Some states actually will subsidize it for you if you're in the US. And then also same thing happens. Like local YMCA's treat it, but basically look up mental health firstaid.org and go from there. But that kind of, I think, leads into an answer to your question, which is, yeah, we are on the front lines, whether or not we want to be. We represent something to people. We represent a comfort that whether or not we want to be that, and we represent a first space where somebody can come where they're expecting, you're normally providing entertainment and information and thoughts, and so people are coming to you expecting, hey, I need your thoughts and information and all of the above on this topic. And it's very, very hard to do. We literally just did an episode on COVID-19 fact versus fiction on my show, where I went through and basically downloaded all of Snopes.com and was like, here are some things that people apparently think that we need to talk about. Because it was stuff like drinking citrus water will help you. Chewing on ginger will delete the virus. Like, oh my, like just so much misinformation out there that many people are like, oh, that seems harmless. Let me try that. And I'm like, you don't, please just don't. I would rather you spend that effort doing stuff that you're supposed to be doing. And when it comes to mental health for this, I've just been having a hard time figuring out what the heck I'm supposed to be freaking doing in terms of what do you want from me right now. So normally I am an edutainer, right? I'm funny and witty, but I'm talking about mental health and trying to make sure that it's not a bummer, so you don't turn away thinking like, oh, this is going to be a really sad stream. But right now I'm in a place where I'm also afraid, but also some people are like, oh, the last thing I want to do is hear about COVID because I'm already anxious and worried about it. I'm coming to a streamer to get entertainment. And then there's the other half that's like, oh my God, where do I get good, reliable information? And yeah. And so it's just been tough teetering that, because I will literally get people in the same stream coming in and being like, hey, can you help me find out if this is fact or fiction? And then somebody being like, oh, I'm going to leave if we're going to start talking about COVID. And I'm like, I'm gonna rip my hair out because I want you guys to have everything you need, but also I'm back in a position which I normally, like, I've kind of figured out where the line is with me as a streamer and how much mental health help I can provide you, and where my responsibility ends and where it's just irresponsible for me to continue helping you and it's time for professionals to step in. I know that line really well, but the line of like, am I entertaining or educating? That's been weird.
And that's a really tough line too, of like when you need a professional's help. So that's something I was really excited to ask Dr. Dunlap about. And you can speak on anything that we've just talked about, but also I don't know where to find where that line is all the time, whether I'm just like being helpful or whether I need to refer to someone else because maybe what I'm doing is harmful.
So yeah, it's really hard to find a line. But one thing that I typically talk about when people come to my streams and are asking for advice or things like that is, if you have to ask the question, it's probably a good idea to go talk to a professional. So whether that's your mental health, whether that's a medical symptom, whether that, whatever it is, if the question is being raised, it probably is a signal from your brain that this is something you're worrying about and you should go talk to a professional about it. Again, as a licensed clinician, I always say, I'm a therapist, but I'm not your therapist. So I'm not going to be handing out advice. But in general, and what you guys are saying is, my heart kept wanting to interrupt and say, guys, just do you. That's the reason that your community is there, is because they want you. And you're trying to do what's best for them. But ultimately, it's your stream. And so, if you need a day where you're just streaming Animal Crossing and you're not talking about it at all, that's totally fine. And if you have informational streams, that's fine too. Like, it takes all types. And the second you try to change yourself to meet the needs of others is when you're going to start losing people in terms of, whether that's retention, whether that is engagement, whether that's people coming to you as a source. Because again, they're already here for you. They want the levity, the perspective that you bring. So just, I guess, have faith in your own knowledge and abilities. And again, the fact that you're asking that question of, I wonder if this is too far, lets me know you're in the right place. You're not assuming that you can go in there and just solve the very problem. And it's a great question to ask the community too. Like, I'm not really sure where I'm at. And that kind of self-reflection is a great way to model what we want people in our communities to do anyway, is like, if I'm saying this, does it come with a grain of salt? What should I also consider? What are some other sources I could look at? So those are all great points that you guys brought up. And so, yeah, just, it sounds so cheesy, but be you.
Yeah. Well, it's a good reminder, because I know there's been a lot of streamers out there talking about how they feel this extra pressure and responsibility now because everyone is online. That is our main form of actually communicating with each other and being able to be social, because we have to have the isolation going on. That they feel this pressure to be super knowledgeable and to be always there for people and to extend their hours and stuff. And I think it's a good reminder to say, hey, you need to look at yourself first. And, if this is too much, take your break. Make sure that you're not overextending just because you want to help everyone else, because that's not helping you.
Yeah, I've got this saying that if I was not afraid of needles, I would probably get tattooed on me. And that is, you cannot pour from an empty pot. So you have to take care of yourself. Self-care is an act of rebellion. It's an act of defiance against the things that are trying to hold you down, whether that is, social oppression, whether that is a virus. Like, taking care of yourself is a radical act. And you can't be there for people if you're not there for yourself first. And if that's the definition of selfish, then we need to destigmatize the idea of being selfish. Because guess what? Yourself is important. You are an important, valuable human being, and you don't owe anyone your time. But the fact that you as mods and you as streamers freely give that time to other people, like, that just elevates you in terms of what kind of amazing human beings you are.
Thank you. I don't tend to think of myself that flatteringly. But no, there's one phrase that I've always heard, and there's a million different ways to put this, but you can't pour from an empty pitcher. If you're trying to help refill other people's cups, sometimes you've got to refill your own pitcher. And I personally had to do that. I think 2 weeks ago. I took a week off of the two main streams that I mod for, because one of them is a politics stream, and it was just all day, every day for me. I'm already very involved in that stuff. And then I think something that I've found among my fellow mods, I've seen it among streamers and in viewers too, is that I get this feeling like everyone is this close to just being a complete nervous wreck right now. I personally feel like if I was this close a few weeks ago, like, I'm there now. And I definitely see, which is a good thing, I see more moderators and streamers taking time. But I also, it's a very tough line when the viewers come to you and you're trying to be something. So it's been, I mean, obviously it's been tough for everyone, but I don't know how that, oh, that was fun. I don't know how that is like I don't know. I guess I don't know how to deal with everybody being that much closer and us being kind of a place to go vent.
So repeat after me. I will not light myself on fire to keep other people warm.
Oh, I will not light myself on fire to keep other people warm.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dunlap. Can I have my sticker?
It does hit different. Yes. It does hit different when I say it myself.
Yeah.
It's almost like this therapy thing.
It's like a real thing. Yeah. I always like to say also, because people will come at me and they'll be like, but I need to help people. That's who I am. I'm a helper. And I'm like, well, first of all, that kind of is a problem, but that's not for me to solve. Like, if this is where you are, like, that's okay. But you can help more people if you're in a better place. And I describe this as like, you know how if you're tired right before bed and somebody asks you to do something, you're kind of cranky and you might still do it, but you're like, I hate this. I hate this person. I hate everything that they're asking for. I was like, but if you're not tired and you've been well fed and you took a walk outside, how much more pleasant you are. So give that pleasantness to other people. If you want to be kind and truly serving, give your best self to other people. And to be your best self, you need to take time for the walking and the feeding and the sleeping for yourself.
Yeah, all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got it on my door right here that says almost everything will work again if you just take a moment to unplug it just for a few minutes, including you. So I'm like, that reminds me, like, I need to just unplug myself from so many different things because we don't really realize it. Like, we're kind of like that old-fashioned circuit board with the telephone operators, getting our cables plugged in everywhere, especially with the internet. And sometimes we need to like actively walk through and just unplug some of those things and remove ourselves from those different areas, different news feeds, even communities. Like I love my community, it's my family, but there are some days, like even just with my real family, I need a break from them. I can't be with them 24/7. And I think that's one of the things we're trying to substitute, that whole actual IRL relationships, interpersonal talking and hanging out with online. And I think we're burning out pretty quickly.
I think that's important whether or not there's a pandemic happening. And then a pandemic, like people have talked about this several times, that there's basically, if not basically, literally, there is a global trauma happening right now. So if you would normally maybe suck it up and just do your thing and whatever it is, and that doesn't work, surprise, imagine how much less that works during the setting that we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to always remember that our resources, whatever they are, our emotional resources, our cognitive resources, our friendshipping or social resources, they are not infinite. They are rechargeable batteries. So they can go for a long time, but at some point you have to plug them back in or they're going to run out, and we're not going to have the fuel to be able to do our best work or any work. I actually have done some consultation with campaigns. So like people who go out and like register people to vote and whatnot. And I always like to tell them, like, it's a sprint, or it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And you have to take care of yourself in the long run, because the cycle of burnout of here's an emergency and I'm going to throw myself at it, again and again and again. And then you burn out 2 weeks before the election. Like, guess what? You're not really helping anybody. And for those who don't like, soft, fluffy feeling words, think about sports. If you get an injury on the field, my coach would kick our butt if we tried to play through an injury. Like, something small, okay, you can work through it. Well, not only because you get hurt, but you're hurting the team. Because if you can't run at your fullest, or if you're not going to be, I played soccer, so if you're not going to be diving at your best or taking PKs as best as you can, get off the field, because the team is more important than the individual in that sense. And so it's, this idea of keeping each other together and afloat is a team sport right now. And we really need one another to, if you're hurting, take a step back, go get medical attention, get the support you need, heal, and then come back. Because I would much rather have that on my team than someone who's struggling, even though the desire is to be on the field. And I totally get that. And that's something that I don't think I validated earlier, which is that feeling and that need. I need to be there. I need to help people. I need to be the resources. There are people who are less fortunate than I am. They don't have as many skills as I do. They don't have the emotional support. I have to do this, and know that you don't have to. It's okay. Because I sit here thinking, I have an entire toolbox of like anxiety management and crisis response, and I have all this training. And guess what, guys? I am very good about taking self-care. I am very good about, okay, clinic hours are over, I get to go be me. And it's actually, being a therapist is a lot like being a mod. Freakishly so, now that I think about it. And so
you're a mod for humanity, for life. Listen, I'm banning you. I'm banning you for that negative self-talk. You can't talk for the next 10 minutes. That's it.
I would actually do that to myself when I had a big mental breakdown like 2 years ago, and I found myself with really bad negative self-talk. And so what I would do is I would just say no, and I would just say it out loud until that self-talk went away. And it works. Or at least for me, it worked, which was great.
Well, there's so much to be said about, and I hadn't thought of it like this, but being calmer than the community that you mod for, or being able to remain calmer than the community you mod for. Because if I get sucked into it just like everybody else is, if I get caught up in the drama and the anxiety of it, then I can't do my job as well as a mod. I can't, because we are there as a calming force, as a reassuring force, all these things that we're supposed to be, where if you're not taking that time to take care of yourself properly, you're not doing the best for your community either. It's just
And
I hadn't thought of it that way.
I want to be really clear that it's totally okay to freak out. Like, with the people I work with on the daily, there's so much anxiety. You take a population who's already anxious and then you throw this on there, anxiety goes up. And so, yes, when I'm in the room, when I'm working with someone, the same thing in a mod room, you are the calming force. Like, okay, let's think about this rationally. But I don't want to give anyone the preconception that I am calm all the time. When the therapist faces off, when the mod faces off, I'm freaking out too, and I'm doing the best I can to manage in the situation. So just know that even if you bring that calm to the mod squad, that's great. But you don't have to have that on all the time. Because that also is exhausting. That leads to burnout. That is way too draining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think a good important thing to remember too is we're so used to like only needing the X number of mods that we already have. This might be a time when like streamers need to realize maybe we do need to grow our mod team so that we're not putting so much on all this set group of individuals, but we can kind of spread it out a little bit more. It's like walking on ice. You want to have most things spread out flat instead of like just pinpointing one thing, because then it cracks. But I think, this is a time that if you're noticing a lot of your mods kind of taking more breaks and more breaks, it's not a bad time to start looking at a B team to come in, even if it's just for this next few months or whatever, just kind of help out. But that, of course, if you're a moderator, noticing that before your streamer does is a fun conversation. But as we've always promoted, like having clear and constant communication with your streamer and your mod team, like that's so important. Like let them know, like if everyone's feeling burnt out and you start realizing, oh, hey, my entire mod team is burnt out, and a few of them can still stick this out. We don't want to have all that weight then on 2 or 3 people when it was used to be on 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely, I've seen, I don't think I'm part of a single mod team that hasn't had someone who's having to go get groceries for somebody that they normally wouldn't, who needs to take a break for their own mental health, who needs to go take care of a family member for whatever reason, who just can't deal with any more COVID-19 news right now. I think it's definitely a good time to pad out your numbers a little bit. There's also more people with a little bit extra time right now, even if it is a temporary thing, something to try out. And I can't stress enough how important it seems to spread that out and have that communication where it's okay to say, I'm not going to be here for a week. I just can't right now. And burnout's always something that we're all ready for and watching for, right? I mean,
it's just so common in the streaming community. Burnout is like the word, oh, I'm so burnt out. And I look at a streamer that says that and I'm like, oh, I bet you are. I bet you were burnt out 3 weeks ago and now you're saying it. Please take a break. But I think another point of communication that's super important, and kind of also to bring it back to mental health and bring it back to really anything, making sure that your moderators, you yourself, are prepared with resources is so much, and having that communication established, not expecting anybody to just know what to say or do, but to prepare for those scenarios. Like I have had conversations with my moderators where we talk about somebody's probably going to come in and post a link to a fake news source. How are we going to handle that? Am I going to address that on stream? Is it just going to be removed? Like all those small nuances. What I know, you can't predict the world, but those are small things that definitely help everybody be prepared and be less nervous in the scenario. And then all of that, of course, leads to, I think, a little bit less burnout. And so when it comes to like mental health first aid, having all those links available, it does not take a lot to have a exclamation help and have the suicide hotline pop up. I know a lot of streamers do that, and super easy. And as a moderator, being like, okay, what do I do? I have a 5-step guide for my moderators of steps to follow should you encounter somebody who is suicidal and is taking that attention from to themselves from chat. And none of them are, make sure this person, talk this person down and make sure that they survive tonight. Like, that is a lot to put on anybody. But you have to have that conversation, because I believe, like, you don't become a moderator because you're not a helper, right? You don't become a moderator because you don't want, you're probably better at giving out advice than you are taking it. You probably are better at enforcing somebody else's rules than keeping to your own and taking care of yourself. Like, you're basically, now that I think about it, like a really sophisticated RA that only types and doesn't walk over and knock on my door. So I think it's super important. Part of communication is having those resources. And I'm going to say it over and over again, because your moderators are only as prepared as you are, and they can only help you as far as you help them. And so I think, whether it's a COVID resource, whether it's maybe it's just having a little thing that says, like, hey, we're on a COVID break right now, and the stream is COVID free for the next hour, and then we'll go back to talking about it. Like, whatever the heck it is, like having those things in place, talking about them beforehand. I just think that's super important.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to add on. Oh, sorry.
I think it's a great idea having that whole COVID free for X amount of time, because I know streamers are getting to the point where they're burnout too on it. And so, I mean, my main stream that I mod for, we don't have mod meetings, but this is something that I think should be brought up in our mod Discord chat of, hey, if there's ever a time when you're like, hey, I just need to pack it away for a little bit, even just give us a code word so we know if you don't want to have a big discussion about it. Like, do something so we as moderators can serve you better to keep the community going.
I also want to add that for those who are in positions of power, whether you're streamers yourselves or you're like the head mod or like the mod mom or whatever, whatever power you hold, to remember to lead by example. So it's one thing to say, oh, you should take a break, and oh, you should step back. But if you're not modeling that same behavior, if you're not engaging in self-care, if you are not doing the same things that you're asking your mods to do, then they're not going to do it, because then they're going to have the exact same feelings that we talked about at the top of the show, which is, I don't want to let my streamer down. I don't want to let my mod team down. And that can keep people in places to where they do get overworked, stressed, burned out. So make sure that, again, if you're in that position, that you're leading by example and that you really are embodying and living the recommendations that you are asking of your mods.
I have to say that advice is hands down the best advice I have ever taken in my entire life. I mean, there's probably some exceptions, but no, the moment somebody emphasized to me, they're like, if you want people to do stuff, the best way for them to do it is not to go, hey, take a break. Hey, take a break. Hey, take a break. Because everybody is hardworking and wants to make sure that you're doing your best and wants to present you the best way, is to model that behavior, is to say, hey, I'm going to go take a break. So if you need one, taking breaks is cool. Now we're going to go over here where there's no stream time, okay? And that, then what I've witnessed is a few things. One, I've been burning out a hell of a lot less, because the times that I take breaks, I feel like are in sync then with what my moderators need, with what my community needs. Like, I'm more in tune with, hey, it looks like it's time for everybody to take a little bit of a breather. And B, I just feel like just that sensation of I'm overwhelmed happens a lot less, because I feel like I have that freedom. I have that card that I can cash in at any time. And by doing so, bonus, I'm making sure that other people feel good. So if we're talking again about that, serving others before you serve yourself, well, by being an example, you do, like Dr. Dunlap said, you do serve others because you're presenting an example. And so they're more likely to take care of themselves. So voila, you help somebody, they didn't even know about it. Bam.
I can 150% attest to that. Just from personal experience, I was on a couple mod teams years ago where that was not the norm for the streamer. The streamer was more of those, oh, I've streamed 212 days in a row kind of things, which, that's great for you, but I can tell that the difference in the mod teams that I'm on currently, where the streamers are very open about when and why they need to take breaks. The mods feel very open about being able to say when and why they're taking breaks. And I think I might have to agree that that is the best advice ever. I think leading by example, especially when it comes to taking breaks, that's just a priceless piece of advice.
I mean, chances are I either got it from Dr. B, who is the clinical director for Take This, or from Dr. Dunlap. It was one of the two of them, maybe even Dr. Coer. Probably all three of them. Probably all three of them at separate points, and then finally on the fourth take, I was like, I'm gonna try this take care of myself thing. And then it's amazing because I'm actually thinking about it right now, looking back and being like, I haven't been as burnt out. Why is that? And I can definitely attribute that to the fact that I was like, all right, since I tell everybody this is so awesome, let me take my own advice. What's that going to feel like? Oh, it does feel awesome. I'm right. Good for me. Like, surprise.
Because most of us can kind of recognize when we're getting close to burnt out, right? I mean, I definitely feel it coming, and it's just the difference of whether or not I feel like I can act on the fact that I can feel it coming up or not. Before, I used to feel like I just had to keep going no matter what. And now I definitely know that if I feel it coming on, I'm going to, take a preemptive step and just say, no, I'm not going to let myself get burnt out. I'm taking a break now. So I don't need to take twice as long a break, next month when I'm actually burnt out and my brain is mush.
Yeah.
For maybe someone who's new to streaming, could be younger, to someone who doesn't really do the self-reflection on that, what are some warning signs for people of like, oh, hey, I might be reaching burnout? Because I know when I had my breakdown 2 years ago, I didn't realize it was happening until it happened. And that was, it was a bad scene, but I've learned a lot from that. So what are some things that people can look out for as far as in their own behaviors or thoughts?
Dr. Dunlap, take it away.
Generally speaking, now this may vary by streamer and mod, but generally speaking, one of the biggest red flags that you're burning out is that you have a sense of cynicism that, like, what's the point? Why should I do this? It doesn't matter. Feeling like you're compelled to do something that you don't want to do. That's a huge, huge red flag that typically even the least self-reflective person can notice. You might also have changes in your eating or sleeping habits. So you might eat more or you might eat way less. You might sleep more than you do, or you might have a lot of trouble sleeping, which I know a lot of people are right now. And so those are some of the big ones. So it's not just like feeling overwhelmed, although that is definitely one of the prominent feelings. It really is about are we allowed to curse on stream? Let me check.
Sure. Yeah.
When you look at your field of fucks, you have none left to give. And
yeah.
If you're feeling like you're there, then you are already over that bridge to burnout or right, like teetering on the precipice. And so that's a good moment to check yourself.
I have two things. One, the sleep thing. The sleep thing I have learned is a self-perpetuating cycle that I can catch that I'm stressed out if I can't sleep, and then I can't sleep because I'm stressed out. So like now it's gotten to the point that if I hadn't slept the night before, I can tell myself like it's a red flag for me, and I go, okay, something's up. So let me take care of whatever the thing is, or let me go to bed extra early because clearly I need it and I'm not letting myself have that thing. So now it's become more of a red flag. The other thing is, and I'm losing my train of thought, so that's very unfortunate. But the other thing is just like a genuine, that's it, I'm done. Everything I do is worthless. I can't do anything useful. People hate me secretly, but won't tell me. Like when I recognize I'm like 2 steps away from quitting the whole thing, I'm going to do it. I have been refraining from quoting this for a long time, but it goes through my mind and I'm going to say it now out loud. It's a quote from Sex and the City. And the quote goes, when you're tired, you take a Napa. You don't move to Napa. Meaning, if you are tired, you go and take a break. You go to sleep. Like take some time for yourself. Let's take a second. You all can laugh.
It's fine. No, it's fine.
There's no judgment.
It's
no judgment.
So I will say that in my head. I will be like, I'm tired. I don't move to Napa. it was when Big was moving to Napa in California. It was the thing. But I don't move away and say, that's it, I'm quitting everything I've worked the past 2.5 years to build up so much. I don't do that. I take a nap and see if I wake up and I feel better. And if I don't have time to take a nap, I take a break. And if I don't have time to take a break, I take a longer shower than I usually do. Like, you find these ways to cut time out. And that's usually like, if you know you're really, really, if you can look back and see that, like, wow, 2 months ago I was super, super passionate about this, and right now I literally can't stand to look at it. That is a great sign that it's not that the passion is gone. It's just a very good sign, probably for me. I know that that's usually, I will come over to my husband now and be like, fuck this, I'm done, nobody cares, and that's usually when he'll be like, okay, so like you're gonna take a week off, or like what? Because it's become short speak in the house, and finding out, and like that's great that I figured out what my thing is, but figuring out what your thing is, dedicating the time and the mind space to do that is so crucial, because I also had a mental breakdown about 3 years ago, and the whole time I was going, I'm fine. This is fine. I'm fine. And like the room is on fire and everything, totally. And I wish that I had listened to myself more at the time, because the signs were all there and I was having these conversations with myself. I was raising these red flags, but I was just going, that's for suckers. These red flags, that's not, I'm fine. So I recommend just taking a sec. If you feel like you're getting tired, taking a second to reflect on, hey, am I like tired, or is this like a different kind of tired? And just going from there, and experimenting and balancing and sorting it out. Like, taking the time to figure out yourself and what to watch for is super important.
You're framing of that,
so
in terms of like the cynicism of, doesn't matter, nobody cares, everybody hates me. That is like, I'm saying academic blah 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 cynicism, and then M's like, bam, this is what it means in the real world, this is what it looks like. It's perfect. That's
really what I do, right? I'm the translator. That's the whole Jimmy Jam.
Oh, that's perfect. I'm listening, just like, yep, check, been there for most of those. For me, I also noticed one, a personal one at least, is just, well, when I don't want to work on a passion project, that is like I'm said, that absolutely is such a huge red flag to me. I'm like, this is literally my passion project, and I'm like annoyed at it right now for some reason. I also find myself,
my thesis is here and you can't see it because it's covered by everything, because I'm just burnt out from school stuff and have been for months, and so I buried it, which I need to start unburying it because it's important. But yeah, that's I just pushed it over there.
Yeah. I noticed that if I'm in a spot where every ping on Discord and every text message annoys the hell out of me before I even know who it's from. Like, it could be my mother, whom I love very much, and as soon as I hear that bing, I'm like, who is that? Who dares talk to me right now? And then I'm oh, I'm too far. I need to just from everything for a little bit, because that is not a good look or good place to be.
So there's this thing called boundaries, which are really important. And I'm hearing kind of a lack of boundaries.
Can you get her off the screen? How do we mute her? I don't.
I need to learn boundaries. How do you spell it?
Channeling my 3-year-old. Boundaries. Yeah, those are those things that keep different parts of your life kind of a little bit, give them some space, give yourself some room to breathe. And I also, when you were talking about, Wes, not wanting to do your passion project, so I teach, and I'm currently having to do everything online. So it's just one class, it's psychology of video games, and I love it. Like, the content is something that
She teaches it live, everybody, by the way. She teaches it freaking live, so there's no reason. Cool. If you're interested in a graduate level course, go and get it. I don't understand why like everybody isn't watching this who like likes Twitch and watches streams and stuff. It's a 600 level course that's just like free on Mixer. Just go get it.
Just don't tell my university.
Yeah. But like everybody should, but not the university. Sorry.
So like
sorry.
this week on class, like it's part 2 of understanding the brain and how that relates to game design. And it's the core of it is motivation. And my class is tomorrow. My slide deck is still not done. I love slide decks. I love making a slide deck. I do. I so much love it. I love psychology. I love games. And like yesterday when I was trying to do my slides, I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm doing a deck on motivation and I don't want to do this. And so that's, again, the red flag of, okay, I know I'm burned out because slide decks are great, but having to do one from scratch every week for 16 weeks, I'm kind of tired and I kind of want to break, but I can't take one. And that's something that I wanted to kind of also throw out there because for a lot of streamers, this is a source of income and it's not like you can just walk away. So just to share, and this is totally my personal way of dealing, not recommendation or anything clinical, but yesterday I was like, well, guess I'll just do it tomorrow then. Extra pressure. But today I'm going to play Stardew Valley for 5 hours. And I did. And I was able to go through today and like knock out, it's still not done. But it's never actually ever done. It's just, it just eventually ships, just like a game. But I got so much more done today in such a less amount of time than if I had in the headspace I was yesterday of like just trying to force myself through it. And I mean, sometimes you do, like sometimes you just have to suck it up. Class is in 5 minutes. You still haven't graded the midterms. You just got to suck it up and go do the thing. But most of the time, you can give yourself some grace. You can give yourself some wiggle room. And that with very few exceptions, there's almost always a tomorrow. There's almost always going to be a later. And so if you are in that space where you feel like I'm definitely burned out, but I have to keep going for whatever reason that is, as long as it's like an actual reason, not the people need me, or, self-aggrandizing stuff like that. It's financial or supportive or whatever it has to be. Make sure that you're giving yourself flexibility in other aspects of your life. Maybe you stop going to the gym, or maybe you up the gym because it's something you enjoy. Maybe you eat that second brownie, not speaking from experience at all, just hypothetical. Maybe you eat that second brownie, and so give yourself that grace and that wiggle room because you're doing something really, really hard and you're pushing through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm going to call out someone who was in chat. My streamer every morning, Mr. McLaffy Taffy.
Great name.
McLaffy Taffy's a great guy. I love him to death. But streaming is his full-time job. This is what he does to support himself, his wife, and his kids. Like, this is a job. And he often talks about how, like, this is a job. I can't just not be there if I don't want to be there. But at the same time, if you're working a full-time job, most of those places give you PTO. And I know you can't really get paid time off with streaming most times unless you have an amazing community who just says, here's money, go away from us, which has actually happened to Taffy. They give him paid money to just not stream for a day. But you'll still have the option of taking time and vacation. And I think that's something that, these full-time streamers need to remember along with their mods too. Like, we all need those vacation days. Mods, it's easier because, there's going to be someone else to kind of fill in our position when we're gone. Streamers, that's a time that you're not there, and it's hard to lose that visibility, but we do need vacation days. So, yeah. And Taffy says, he's his best boss and his worst boss because he just doesn't do that stuff.
So, one idea, I'll just throw it out there, is if it is your 9 to 5, then treat it like a 9 to 5 or whatever your hours are. And that, okay, like when I'm done with work, I come home and I leave the office at the office. It's much harder when you're working from home, as most people are now experiencing. So like having a dedicated, this is workspace, this is play space. Like that can be a really big help. I know some therapists that I've been working with who are trying to like find this balance of work at home is like she'll finish up her telehealth and then she'll go and walk around the block as if it was her commute home. Because if you're working a full-time job, you probably have a commute where you're listening to the radio or you're decompressing in some way. So that way when you're home, you can be home.
So, I know this one. It's called transition time.
Yes, transition time.
Thank you, How to ADHD.
Also she's amazing.
That sounds genius.
Yeah, it's just called transit. It basically tells your brain, I am transitioning. It's cues that you normally have that you don't realize that you have.
You see, that's something I think I've been missing in my life and why my grad school project's been going to the side, because in my last apartment, I at least had a spare bedroom when a roommate wasn't living there that I could kind of commute to that bedroom, but it was still a little too close. Here, like, this is my space. It's my bedroom and my office. And I have a screen that I can put up to kind of block what's behind me and kind of close me in the cubicle. But I need to actually take that time to leave the house, go around the block, come back, just so I can be like, I've changed spaces. I've done that transition. Like I didn't know that was a thing. I need to do that. Thank you.
Can I throw in another tip?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut Wes off. When you go for that walk, you can. So everybody knows Pavlov, right? The conditioning response of ring a bell, the dog salivates. So I want you to think about playing Left 4 Dead, and when you hear that witch music, and then your skin starts to prickle because the witch is near. That's a conditioned response. So what you can do though is you can condition good feelings. And so if you're doing that, you're taking your walk, you're taking your break, you want to set up a space for yourself. What you can do is listen to some music, and that's your calming music. And it begins to cue your brain of, okay, this is time to relax. This is time to work. This is time to do something else. And so it's the exact same thing as like classical conditioning of you're pairing a stimulus. So in this case, maybe a song with a behavior until you no longer need that stimulus to get to that behavior, which is super truncated. It's like, I'm sure I got something wrong in there because it was so brief. But yeah, so like even if you put a line of tape on your floor or you put up that screen and then you have like kitty cat come in and like have music or a set of light. Some people will pop a peppermint because it's a really strong flavor that has a scent associated with it, and scent's really powerful. Not peppermint in particular because that's been debunked, but just some way to stimulate your senses so you're all the senses if possible, that this is a different space. This is a different headspace. This is a different physical space. This is a different emotional space.
I absolutely need to try those things. I've worked from home for a long time before this, and I've never used like a transition time. But I'll also just like answer an email way after work is done because I don't have that separation. They're okay. Yep, they're both giving me the don't do that. I know it's bad. I know.
Easier said than done. I will appreciate it's easier said than done. And I am guilty too. But I also have the mentality of like, unless it's an emergency. And again, as a clinician, my threshold for emergency is like, is somebody about to hurt themselves? Right. Very different. Very good in grad school though, when you're working with game design students who are freaking out about like some code not running right, and that's the end of their world. I'm like, guys, we didn't have to call 911 today. It's been a good day. It's been a very chill day. So I don't even know how I went down that route, but yes, you should try it and give yourself the time and the space and try to set those boundaries. There's that B word again of like, this is my work time. This is my play time. Because you're going to do both of those better because they're now separate and they're not intermingling in as much as it's possible, given all the constraints that we're under right now.
Which I'm going to bring it all the way around, if that's okay. Oh, no, go ahead.
It probably also means if you're going to have those boundaries, the switch with the AC, Animal Crossing maybe needs to be put in another room or put in a drawer or something when you're in that work time. So you're not tempted to like do it all together.
Is your dissertation on Animal Crossing?
No, it's on museums, which I can't go to.
Are there museums
Animal Crossing?
Animal Crossing.
I'm just like, okay, let me move Animal Crossing away.
Yeah, it is on like virtual reality and museums and all of that, so I can still kind of do it. It just
oh no! Anyways, Mxiety, you were going to bring it all the way around. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So we were talking about enforcement and enforcing positive behaviors instead of negative ones, and being an example and all those things. So I have this concept, and I believe Dr. Dunlap kind of even alluded to it but she did it in the fancy way. So what we call it in my stream is giving yourself an emotional cookie. So emotional cookies have no calories, but they make you feel great because who doesn't love cookies? So what cookies. You do, right? Anytime you are nice to yourself, you're like, hey, I get myself an emotional cookie. That gets me a cookie. And you don't have to like eat a cookie physically, but you can do something rewarding to yourself. But it's basically patting yourself on the back in an emotional way. All that is it trains your brain to recognize, hey, I'm doing a good thing right now. I'm doing a good thing for myself. Because the same way we reinforce negative thoughts and negative behaviors is by constantly saying, oh, I did a bad thing. Well, that's what I deserve to do, for example, right? And you continue going down that path and path and path and path, and you're down there. So catching yourself on the good thought and then saying to yourself, oh, that deserved a cookie is a great way to continue down that good path. So whenever you hear yourself, instead of being like, I don't deserve a break, if you ever hear yourself going, I know I could use a break, be like, oh, that was a really good thought. I know that that's normally what other people say is a good thing to do. So I deserve a cookie for that. And basically continuously doing that. So we award each other emotional cookies for being kind to ourselves.
Oh,
The end.
that's something I'm gonna have to pick up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start trying to
Oh,
do that and
yeah.
build some better habits. And every time I respect one of those boundaries,
You'll get there.
Boundary.
You'll get there.
oh,
Yeah.
every time I set one of those or respect one of those, I'm gonna try and give myself an emotional cookie and get better at this stuff. We are coming up on our last 10 minutes here, and we got some questions from chat. So first, Chef Hazmat asked, I know we talked about this in the pre-show. This is super important. Please link dump on us if you have it. But what are some good sources out there for people with no insurance? Or maybe people that we don't know are, in America, maybe it's not an American source or something like that. Yes, I am just ready for the link dumps. Tell us all about them.
Dr. Dunlap, you could totally take it away, but do you mind if I throw some first out
Oh,
there?
please go for it.
So this is my jam because this is what I am. This is what I do is that I offer resources. Again, I'm not a professional, but I want to send you to places where you can get the help you need. Number one, and I think the most important one, a lot of doctors have a sliding scale, and a lot of people don't know that. For example, when I talked to my doctor, I had X amount that I had to pay her as a copay with my insurance. She said, if I don't have to file insurance and you pay me $10 more, like we won't go through insurance, and everything was fine. That worked out for me in a transition where then I didn't have insurance. That's how that started. But basically it was insurance paid her so that let's say for example, she normally gets paid $100 per session, right? Like for example, and I would pay a $20 copay and insurance would pay the rest. So she was basically saying, okay, you don't have insurance now. Why don't you pay me $35 and I will just count it as even? And so a lot of doctors do that, maybe not $35, but a lot of doctors will do that where they have a sliding scale. They have specific time slots open to patients who will offer them a sliding scale payment. So the reason that I endorse this before I say go to BetterHelp or something like that is because BetterHelp is freaking expensive and it does not have a sliding scale. And I personally, I think it's a great resource because it does offer professional help. And if that's the only way you can get it, please, I would rather you go to a professional. Like, I don't care if you have to ride a donkey there, like whatever you need to do, I would rather you go and do that. But if you have the ability, look up, if you don't have insurance, go to Psychology Today. Also, there is I'm posting professional resources. That's the link. I collect them all on my website. And so that includes, there's websites like Take This, has like a list of resources that you can go to. Finding Professionals, the American Psychiatric Association has a list. The American Psychological Association has a list. Anxiety Depression Association of America, National Institute of Mental Health, Rise Above the Disorder, To Write Love on Her Arms. They all have lists of professionals. So Rise Above the Disorder actually has a list of professionals that they will send you to that work with gamers. So like that's how this stuff is out there. And the resources are out there. It's just a matter of grabbing them. And I think that's the fastest that I could do that. So
No, that's fantastic. I can't wait to go through and like find all that stuff and hopefully file it somewhere where I can reference it when someone needs it. Dr. Dunlap, do you have any favorite free resources that you want to plug or tell us about?
So, I mean, obviously, Take This. As someone who works there, I take a lot of pride in the resources that we offer. There's the traditional like crisis hotline, suicide prevention hotline, crisis text line, all those kinds of things. I always like to remind people you don't have to be in crisis to use those services. You could just be feeling bad. You don't have to feel like you're this close. You can call and they can give you support. They can also give you resources in your area, because that's one of the hardest things with mental health is that it's so different based on where you are. Every state has its own laws and ethics, and there's different levels of professionals at every step of the way. So getting in contact with like your local Department of Health, they're going to have a ton of resources in terms. Pretty much, I think every state has a insert state name psychological association. So for me, Maryland Psychological Association. I'm also licensed in Virginia, so I'm on the Virginia Psychological Association, and they will have lists of their providers. And especially given right now, a lot of providers are trying to provide sliding scales. And a lot of providers, I mean, I don't know if this is too inside baseball, but like I typically have a client load of 22, and I'm currently seeing 6 people because everybody else either doesn't want to make the transition to telehealth, which okay, that's your choice. But also, financial security is really up in the air for a lot of people, and paying for therapy is like one of the very first things to go when we're looking at like the hierarchy of needs. It just, I mean, I don't take it personally. It's just the case that it is. So if you're looking for mental health support, know that most providers are not seeing people in person. We're doing it all on telehealth. There's a ton of groups that are starting up. Some are around specific topics, some are for specific populations. Group therapy is cheaper. So it's like $50 for a session, but that's because you're with a bunch of people and that's without insurance. So that's another option out there too. If you have a student health center, they will do less expensive care as well because they are trainees. Make sure that they're being supervised by a licensed professional. And I guess the last thing I would throw out there is I don't ever want to throw shade, but BetterHelp and what's the other one?
The other one. I can't remember it either. It's bothering me.
Talkspace.
Talkspace.
Just as a provider who looked into doing those, because I thought, well, maybe I can help people because it's less expensive than, my practice doesn't take insurance. So, I'm thinking, well, maybe I can donate some of my services. Like the stuff on the back end.
That's expensive. I'm sorry. And the back end stuff. I'm sorry.
Like in terms of like pay, a provider on one of those sites gets like $15 to $20 an hour, which I can tell is nothing. Like I don't think I would not
pay so much. That is so bullshit.
So like
angry that it's expensive. Oh my god.
I don't want to say people shouldn't use the resources that are out there, but I would encourage people, if you're thinking about doing BetterHelp or Talkspace, I would really, really encourage you to look at your local or even just your statewide telehealth network. You can go to Psychology Today. I can guarantee you everybody's doing telehealth right now because that's the only way we can really do it. And you're more likely to get a sliding scale. And I guess the most important bit, you're very likely to get better care because a clinician, like, would you want someone doing surgery who is making $15 an hour? No, you really don't. And so again, if it's the resource you have and you like it, great. If you want to try it out, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. However, I can tell you that therapists all over the world, all over the US are doing telehealth and want to be able to be there for people who need it.
And I know my personal family practitioner, when I was looking into mental health, they had lists, like a printed list that they just Xeroxed, and they have circled the names of people they recommend, people who do certain insurances or don't do insurances. And my office even has a community health advocate, which covers everything from nutrition to mental health, the whole broad spectrum of just taking care of yourself. And a lot of hospitals and local healthcare providers, like they have someone in that position, or they have an office manager who can fulfill that position to give you that Xerox copy list of here's people in our general county, tri-county area who can maybe help you out on that.
And one last resource to drop in there. If you have insurance, call them. Make them tell you. Do not try to figure out who takes and who doesn't, because that will drive you up a wall and it's a waste of time. Call your insurance company, have them email you a list of the providers that they will cover, and then contact those providers. It's a lot of work. Starting with the insurance company is the best way. If you don't have insurance, reach out to a practice first that does take insurance, and then let them know that you don't have it. That's how you're going to get to the idea of the sliding scale, because insurance pays less than fee for service, and so you'll more likely have an easier time getting in to see a clinician who's going to have a sliding scale for you.
Awesome. That's super helpful. What a great way. Boom. And we're actually running up right on 6 o'clock, which means unfortunately we got to wrap up this awesome conversation and get out of Danitaj's way so he can start Stream of Thought, which is also going to be a fantastic show. So for outros, Em, why don't you go first?
Mxiety.com. That's it. Everything there. Mixer.com/Mxiety. Next.
All right.
I am
Dr.
not
Dunlap?
nearly that organized. On Mixer, if you're interested.
Oh, you cut out.
Where did sound go? Where did sound go?
Oh, it's back.
Okay. So I stream my class on Wednesday evenings. You can find me on Mixer at hey.k, so HEYDOCTOR, and then the letter K, or Twitter. I live on Twitter, so it's at Kelly N Dunlap, and I can put it in the. I think I could put it in there. But yeah, those are the best places to find me. Yeah.
Smott's got it.
And I'm Rainy. I'm here all the time. You can catch me in the mornings at cafes, but I'm around. You'll find me.
I'm Wes. Here, Locos or Lucids, you'll find me somewhere. Thank you so much for staying around. Seriously though, don't touch that dial. We're gonna be offline for like 2 seconds, and we're gonna be back with another show right after this. So hang around, check that
Dan's
out.
talking about bad behaviors and bad habits tonight, so should be good.
Oh my gosh, well, all those ones that I have that we just talked about. That's fantastic.
Boundaries.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming on.
Boundaries.
Thanks so much for having us.
I'll try.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Take care, everyone.
Bye.